hope. You don't have to be there, and there is another way of doing things. So I think a sense of hope is really important. Doesn't have to be this way. And there are people that have been there and recover. So full burnout can take time. Is if you let things arrive to a point that you present your resignation, went out of the door, sold your company, and if you have the luxury of having the resources to allow yourself some time, take advantage of that.
Hello and welcome to Marketing Speak. I'm your host, Stephan Spencer. It's my pleasure to have Ana Melikian with us. Dr. Ana Melikian, PhD, is a speaker, author, and host of the Mindset Zone, a top 1% podcast. Ana supports leaders and organizations in increasing impact while avoiding burnout. Leaders Hum selected Dr. Melikian for their Powerless 2023 for her work on human potential and self-leadership. Ana, it's so great to have you on the show.
Oh, it's a pleasure to be here.
So first of all, why so focused on burnout and overwhelm? Like, did you have a burnout moment that you needed to address yourself, and then you became an expert in it while you were digging out of your own hole?
Yes, in many ways, I think it's we have to have that personal experience. And what I realize is that as we arrive to a certain age in our lives, it's rare the person that doesn't have a burnout experience. And that moment can be different from person to person. In my case, was facing a cancer diagnosis that made me rethink everything.
Wow. So tell us more about that. Like, what happened and how did you get through that?
So in 2016, an active person, like I try to be active, exercising, eat organic, all the things that is supposed to be good for us. And I was doing that. And in 2016, I got diagnosed with a rare form of breast cancer called inflammatory breast cancer, and was really a shock. I never thought that I will suffer from cancer because I had a healthy lifestyle. And that made me really reevaluate. It's one of the things that that type of diagnosis and the treatment that comes afterwards, that I'm so thankful that the advances in medical treatments around cancer has allowed me to be here today, make us to have to reevaluate, because I could not keep going to the same speed that I was going at the time. Yes, I was in general having a healthy lifestyle except sleep. I was cutting my sleep very much. And that was one of the things that I changed afterwards. I was already working with a lot of mindfulness and mindset, but that made me even feel the power of using our mindset even more than before. So it's all that transformation. And in my personal story, is also I had to, I really took the first time as, okay, I'm going to beat this thing. And we managed to get it in remission, great. And 2 years later, in 2018, I had another cancer in the other breast. So that made me, I cannot be postponing this. I really have to be living the moment and living, yes, with cancer, with all this. And I will go over the treatments again. I will go to the arena again and put this in remission again. But I have to change my attitude mainly towards my body, that in the first time was a little bit almost like the enemy that I had to fight with. The second time I had to realize, no, the fact that I'm healthy otherwise is is an amazing thing. My body being is me. And the moment is now. So I took a different attitude in relation to the way that I went through the treatments, that I think was more empowering. And that that journey made me understand that, okay, because I think with us, so many of us, we want to make a positive impact out there. So one of the ways that we live our purpose. And the question how I thought that I could make a big impact if I work hard, really hard. And then became the question, is it possible to make an impact without working so hard? Because physically I could not do it. And that what led me to burnout research. And what I realized is that if we are working so hard that we are pushing our limits to exhaustion, we are not making the full impact that we can make. So if we are overextending ourselves, that is a sign that we are not in our full potential. So
Right.
how can we create for ourselves and for the others around us the conditions and the mindset to be in the flow of optimal performance that allow us to have the more leverage and the bigger impact while taking care of ourselves and preventing burnout?
Yeah. So please differentiate for our listener the difference between burnout and overwhelm.
Yeah, because burnout now is a word that is being used for defining everything and nothing. The problem when we start to overuse a word is that if we look to my background, my PhD is in psychology, so that is my default mode. I look to the research that we have done in psychology since the 70s. We are looking into burnout, starting with the healthcare, with the doctors, nurses, and now overall. And the way that we define burnout as three dimensions. There is the dimension of, I call it the energy dimension. You feel lack of energy. You feel exhausted physical and emotionally. So that is one of the things that people feel as I'm burning out. And then there is another dimension that I like to call it connection dimension. That is when people feel disassociated, cynical about what they do. They feel disconnected. That is another characteristic of the burnout. And you can think about the nurse, of the teacher that went to their profession because they love to help others. And now they are in a point that they are looking to become a real estate agent because they don't feel that the work they do has any impact. So they are disconnected of their purpose and they are exhausted of the hours. So why bother? So that is the two big dimensions of burnout, of the full burnout. And then usually what happens when that happens is that there is also a sense of lack of personal efficiency. So that are the three dimensions of the full burnout, even recognized by the World Health Organization. But there are these other forms of lighter burnout that usually people say I'm feeling burnout that are not as serious of this one. That is the overextension. They are exhausted, but they are still connected with their purpose, and they think that prevent them to go really to the burnout, the full burnout area or zone. And my big thing for the overextended people is you are a frog in the pot of boiling water. Yes, you think that this is part of your job description, is part of life, and you keep going and going and pushing and pushing and pushing. But careful, the temperature of the water where you are in is increasing 1 degree at a time. And before you notice, you are going to be tipping into the zone of full burnout. And then you take some days off and you recover and you keep pushing and pushing and pushing. And then you go to the zone, to that darker water of the full burnout. And eventually you wake up one day and you are fully there, and it takes time to recover. You can, if you are overextending yourself, still with resources, you can do something about that. You see the results quicker than falling into the full burnout that takes time, a long time to recover. And then you also have another zone that is you still have the energy, but you are disconnected, you are disengaged. So why bother do more than you have to do in your job description if you don't see a sense of connection, a sense of purpose. And that is also a form of burnout. And in organization is something that makes this kind of cycle happen, that you have people that are overextending themselves, people that are still with some space, a capacity, but not using it, and creates resentment and imbalance between that two groups that leads to more burnout and less impact.
Yeah. So this is a framework that you've created with these four quadrants where somebody has energy or not energy, they're connected or not connected, and thus they're either burned out, disengaged, or overextended, or what, healthy.
Yes, the four quadrants was the way that I this work is based in the research of Dr. Christine Maslach, that she has more than 3 decades in her team of research on burnout, and she has an assessment that is quite well known. It's like the golden standard, that is the Maslach burnout inventory, that allow us to see where people are in these 3 dimensions. And they produce a report that is very comprehensive. When I was doing this with groups, professional groups, when I was speaking to organizations or to companies, what I was noticing is that for people that are overextending in burnout, that report was difficult to consume. So I start to do these debriefing sessions, and I explain things with these four quadrants. So the four quadrants is my contribution in the way of explaining this. And suddenly I start to see, oh, this makes sense. And they see that they can move, they have the power of moving from one zone to the other. And then I start to use these often in the way that I explain the burnout.
Right. So if somebody is potentially burned out, they feel burned out, but they're actually in an overextended quadrant, what would you have them do to, turn things around and not end up fully burned out?
Yes. So because technically maybe they are not in the full burnout, but they are in their way to it. And that is my sweet spot where I love to work with people because of the power that we have to get results. And the first thing is the awareness component. Like in so many things of personal, professional development and self-leadership, one of the more effective ways to doing this work is by developing the self-awareness. And for developing the self-awareness, we have to create moments to pause, to press the pause button. Because otherwise it's difficult. If we are in the rut of the day-to-day, in the treadmill or juggling, whatever metaphor uh, um, represents better the experience of somebody that is overextending themselves, they have, or by the needs of others around them, or by their own health, or by something they have, or sometimes good things, going to a conference. Or when I speak, I try to create this moment where they feel the survey, and then they are there as an audience. When I'm speaking, they are pressing the pause button, and suddenly when I put these four quadrants, these four zones, they have an insight. They realize, they see themselves as that frog in the pot of the boiling water, and they go, oh, maybe I can do something about. So that pause allows them to create the awareness about where they really are, and also hopefully give them the power. So what can I experiment with that allow me to try a different way of doing things that is not overextension and still have impact? Because the other important insight is understanding that they are not having their full impact by being in there. And goes a little bit against some core beliefs of certain generations, that you put your head down and you work, 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 work. And so there is some resistance there. But when they start to see that there are other people that they admire, that they respect, that are making a bigger impact. That is really their motivation force, making a bigger impact for themselves, for their organizations, for the people around them. They start to be more open to try something different, to sleep more, to take care of themselves, to be more effective in a strategical way.
Right. So how did you end up getting more sleep and turning your health around and your mindset and all that? How did what were some of the most powerful tools in your tool set?
In my case, initially was, or you say you don't have a choice, or you say, or there is a choice. There is always, I always say that the life circumstances, me having cancer was not the choice, was the life circumstances. I call the lemons that life give us, and sometimes they are not lemons. They are full, big watermelons that are thrown at us. But then we have a choice. And the other choice that I could take that was not do a treatment that was, or there are different paths that I could have choose, but I choose going with conventional medicine plus all that I knew about mindset, positive psychology, and psychology to be my partners and allies in my own journey. And that was the big life circumstance that made me pause. But my message to others is you don't need to wait until I have something as serious as a diagnosis of cancer to change our lives. Learn from others. We have this capacity of vicarious experience. We can learn from other people. So don't be waiting for the big thing. And so become aware of where we are at the moment and really embrace the power that you have to change your lives.
Yeah. One of my favorite quotes from Joe Polish is that some people are in our lives just to be a bad example.
Yeah, and we can learn from it. We don't need to. We can learn from everybody, from ourselves, from our experience, and for other people' experiences. So, and life, how do you say, uh, as more years we live in this planet, life gives us the lemons and the watermelons. It's just the realities, part of the journey. What we learn from it is always the question.
So let's say that our listener has a team, maybe under them that reports to them, or they have a team that they're a part of, and they're colleagues at the same reporting level. How would this listener address the fact that they're almost certainly are going to be burned out or at least overextended and potentially also disengaged colleagues on the team? And how do you identify who those are? And then how do you address that?
So that is one of the things when I speak with people in companies and I present the four quadrants, these four zones that people go, so because they manage to differentiate, full burnout usually is turnover. They are out. So there is a small percentage that keep there, but is never a big number. But you have the big numbers in the overextended and sometimes in the disengaged, and not how many people as you wish to be in the engaged that is in the flow of the optimal performance and connected with the purpose. So that differentiation for a leader gives them options and gives them a roadmap, and also makes the hard question, because does your company, if you are a leader of the company or the organization, as a culture of burning people out? And we can think about the tech, the tech world in Silicon Valley. They used to have, I don't know if they still have, but I know that was a tradition there to have these burnout workshops, that they will have the programmers like doing competition with each other to program until the wee hours and days after days until out, and then comes the next one and trying to beat each other. So what's a culture of burnout? That is difficult to be sustainable. So if your industry, if your organization has a culture of burnout, it's really hard to change that, But I will argue that the companies that are brave enough, the leaders that are courageous enough to make that change, they will be able to create a more sustainable success and sustainable innovation. And that is one of the keys for me, that we speak so much nowadays about environment sustainability. And is very, very important because this planet is the best one for living. I don't like the idea of going to Mars, to be honest with you, or the moon. So I love the planet Earth. So let's take care of it. And we also have to be speaking about work sustainability. What that looks like. Mainly now with the introduction of the AI technologies, this can be a great opportunity to create a bigger impact out there, minus the burnout. But if we are just reacting to it, oh, we can be 10 times more productive. Oh, we can put 10 more things in the table. We are going to be creating more burnout. So it's really important that we create for leadership people that can make the decisions, these moments where they can pause and really think about what work sustainability looks like. Mm-hmm. Because otherwise we are just reacting to everything that is happening, and we are going not to be doing the impact that we can make and creating even more burnout out there in the world.
Yeah, and as you said earlier, some of the structures inside of companies are actually creating burnout, like the hackathons.
Yes, yes, that is the word. Yes.
Yeah. I never liked the concept of a hackathon. I was never into it. I never really fully understood it. I've never been a part of one. I've never tried to create one in my company. And now I'm glad I never did, because totally it seems so obvious. Like it's a hacking marathon, code till you drop sort of situation, I guess. It just doesn't make any sense.
And it's like using people like matches, and they spend and then we throw them away. And I think it's much, if we see that all of us have these beautiful flames inside that we can keep nurturing, that we can keep the connection with the purpose is so important, is we can make a bigger impact out there. And also is realizing that the burnout issue is a symptom of something else. So in the old days, when the coal mine, they used to take the little bird, the canary, down in the little cage to the mine. And when the canary started to be dizzy and not singing, they knew that there were fumes. And then everybody was out of the mine until they cleared the fumes out. The canary is like the symbol of the person that gets in full burnout. So does it make sense when we are seeing people really getting burnout, just keeping people with the same toxic fumes that create burnout? But that is what we are doing. We are just spending people, and then, oh, the turnover is so expensive. Yeah, but you can do something about. You can, but it's the systemic causes, the things that, and it's not just the overload of work more than the capacity that we can do. Yes, it's one of the root causes of burnout, but is also the sense of lack of control, the sense of things are not fair. There are other dynamics there that contribute to the burnout, full burnout, that we can do something about it.
So what's the assessment that you would recommend folks take in order to see if they're burned out or overextended, or what? Is it the Maslow burnout inventory, or is it some other simpler assessment?
That I love that one, and it's the one that I use in organizations. There is a fee to do it, and I always suggest to do it somebody that knows the assessment quite well, because you can take more out of the results. And it takes like 10 minutes. So they have two scales in the toolkit, the burnout toolkit. There is one to assess the levels of burnout in the 3 dimensions that I spoke: exhaustion, the dimension of exhaustion, the dimension of the disconnection, and then the efficiency. And another scale that is about the root causes, the mismatches that are creating the conditions for burnout, so we can have a good indication of what is the more effective thing to address to change the dynamic in an organization. And it takes about 10 minutes for somebody to fill out that. So it's a short, effective tool with tons of research behind it. What I advise people is then is somebody that has experience and help them with that information to create a pathway to get them out of where they are. Yes, awareness. Number one, awareness. And then how can you boost your choices, opportunities to create a different path that will lead to cultivating work sustainability?
Yeah. And you help folks with that, creating that path?
Yes, that is part of what I love to do is the creation of the awareness, and then, okay, let's see what we can do to solve this.
Right. Okay. And tell me more about this mismatch that can happen when the job responsibilities of a person maybe don't match their strengths and the things that they enjoy doing, and then they end up getting disengaged and unhappy and exhausted through that mismatch.
So that is that systemic thing. So if we see the burnout is felt at the level of the individual, but the root causes usually are systemic. Usually, if we think about the online world, entrepreneurs, small teams, a lot of the thing is the workload. And for leaders, it's a lot of workload. They have more than in their plate that is humanly possible to do. And then, even when they introduce things like AI, they can see immediately the impact of, oh my gosh, now I can do more. And then my question is, what are you going to use the time that you release? If it's going to put more in your plate, you're just going to create even more workload problems and more mixed fit there. If you use the time that you release to be more strategical, then you are speaking my language and you are going to be creating a bigger impact. So that is the more evident. Another one, mainly when you are working with teams and organizations, has to do with the sense of control. When you are micromanaging, typical, people don't feel that they have sense of control. If you use technology, even AI, to survey, to be a surveillance and micromanaging, I think that is not going to be a good thing. But if you use these tools and other things to give people more a sense of self-control, human nature is very important for us to have a sense of control. We don't feel that we are robots doing things. So have that also in consideration, and that can be one of the mismatches that takes to burnout. Then another one has to do with the sense of reward. And it's not just money. Yes, if we are working hard and then we get reward with a bonus is great. But for some people, mainly younger generations, their reward can be more in flexible time, more in the opportunity of having the 4-week work week. So the reward is different from group to group and individual to individual, and we have to have this in consideration. And there is the sense of community. If they feel that they have a community in their workplace, and now with the hybrid workplace, how can we build that community? Or is a toxic community? So all of that things are important. Do they feel that the promotions happen in a fair way? That also can contribute to burnout. For instance, sometimes the manager change and they feel that that person is not being fair in the way that they evaluate things. That absolutely can lead to disengagement, or other forms of burnout. And the sense of values, if their personal values are not aligned with the company values, what they see happening in action also can generate this connection that can lead to burnout. So we have some flexibility. How do you say, even in the workload, because sometimes I work organizations, oh, but we have to work hard when we are doing a launch. Absolutely. But do you have a light at the end of the tunnel where people can breathe and recover? That is the key too.
So if someone is, let's say, completely burned out, it could be you, the listener. It could be someone on your team. It could be a loved one. What's the first, second, and third thing that you want to do for that person, whether it's themselves or somebody else?
Hope. You don't have to be there, and there is another way of doing things. So I think a sense of hope is really important. Doesn't have to be this way. And there are people that have been there and recover. So full burnout can take time. Is if you let things arrive to a point that you present your resignation, went out of the door, sold your company, and if you mainly if you have the luxury of having the resources to allow yourself some time, take advantage of that, because there is a time element there to let your body recover, your mind recover, and of course you can get an help of a professional to help you through that journey from coaching. There are coaches that specializes in burnout, doing things in personal development, reevaluate your core values, those things. But full burnout takes time. If you are in the overextended zone and you are aware of it, and you tip your toe in the full burnout, you rest a little, and there you go again, the world will keep spinning if you stop a weekend without working. The world will keep spinning. Mm-hmm. So give yourself the grace. Now we are, and take advantage of nature and the seasons. If it's close to the end of the year, one of the beautiful things about the holiday season and then the end of the year is that it's almost a sign from our culture restarting. We are restarting a new year, starting again in January 1st. So use that little bit of breathing room that society gives us in a cultural way towards the end of the year to reevaluate what is important for you. And you don't have to end to the end of the year to do that. Think about the end of the quarter. Companies work a lot by quarters. So take that as a cue to restart. And why not to take that to every month? Every month we start with the first of the month. So take that last day and first day as a way of restarting. Or why not every week? Why not every day?
So how much time would you say for somebody who's fully burned out do they need to recover?
What most people, most coaches that work with to recover people of full burnout, they are speaking about 12 months to 18 months to recover the average. So it's a long time.
Yeah, that is. If somebody is fully burned out, I would say that their first instinct is to quit their job.
Correct.
And then they'll take another job somewhere else, but won't they end up burned out at that place too, because they haven't solved the root cause of their burnout, which is their own bad habits and choices as far as putting their own maybe mental health or physical health secondary in relation to whatever their job duties are?
Absolutely. They can be very lucky to go to a company that has a different culture and they start to see people doing things in different ways. But most of the times they are in that cycle. They get some relief, but then they have to pay the bills, like there go again, and they keep repeating that cycle.
Yeah. And somebody who's maybe burned out because they're a full-time parent and they're homeschooling their kid, you can't quit that job and start over somewhere else with a new family. So, I mean, I guess technically some fathers could do that. They could, abandon their family. But, it's much harder for the mother to do that. But that's, of course, dysfunctional and horrible. So what would a parent do who's burned out from parenting?
Ask help and really tap into the resources. Hopefully, they will have resources around them and they are not leveraging those resources. There are cases that people don't have resources, but there are organizations out there that maybe can help them. But is recognizing that, like any human, we have our limits and it's okay to ask for help. One of the more transformative things for me when I read the book, The 7 Habits of Highly Effective People of Steve Covey.
Yeah, great book.
It's a great book. It's, for very good reasons, is a classic and totally deserve it. And one of the big mindset shifts for me was one of the diagrams, images that he has towards the book for describing the 7 habits. He's speaking that first we go from being dependent. A child is dependent of an adult. That is just we need somebody to help us, part of our development. And then it's all about helping that child to become independent. Wonderful. But then many of us stay stuck in that independent for independence sake syndrome. And we are all, our self-worth is about being independent. I have to be able to do this by myself. That is what society prays, what I was raised with. And what I love of the work of Steve Covey in the 7 Habits is that they shows no, if we stop there, we are stopping short of our potential. If we want to really have a bigger impact, we have to learn to be interdependent. We can do more together than we can do alone. So human beings are connecting beings. Even with all the friction that can happen in groups, we can do more together than we can do alone. So let's learn healthy forms of being interdependent. And as a parent, yes, you have your partner, if you are lucky to have a good partner that can help you release the load. And you have to ask, you cannot be, oh, but he or she should know. No, you have to ask. And who else out there in your environment can help you to have a little bit of breathing room? Otherwise, you are going to get burnout.
Yeah. So if somebody is maybe seeing a colleague or a friend who's seemingly burned out or at least overextended or perhaps disengaged. By the way, I remember some study that was done, I think it was by Gallup, where they found that a large percentage of employees were either not engaged or actively disengaged in their companies, like more than 50% or something. That was just crazy. And if that's the new norm, or maybe it's been the norm for a while, that's pretty scary to our listener who might be a business owner or a manager of a team, because that means the bulk of their team is either not engaged or actively disengaged. And not engaged is that's not workable.
Absolutely. And we have the numbers. Gallup does a beautiful job in getting those big numbers together. We know in the United States, if a company has around 30% of their employees engaged, that is a healthy company. 30% means that 70% are not engaged.
Yeah.
Thinking about that is really, whoa. Okay. In Europe, it's even worse. The numbers are in the teens, if they are lucky in the 20s. So this is a big problem affecting all big organizations that I think we have the power to do something about by helping, but we have to change the culture of work. That is where the resistance happen. And that is where I go back to work sustainability. Why are we working? What is the meaning of our work? What is the purpose of our work? How can we together doing something that is meaningful? You will get more people engaged.
Yeah. So how do you change the culture to align people with more meaningful work that matches their core values?
I'm not saying that is the only way. but starting with the leader really makes a huge difference. It's very difficult to change this if you don't start with the top
Yep.
leadership. So if people at the top realizing that maybe there is another way of doing that and leading their organizations to a different place, they have the power to allocate the resources to make that happen. If it's just HR department wanting to make the difference, they don't have the capacity. They usually are totally have more on their plates that is humanly possible to do, and they don't have the resources necessary, and they feel frustrated and they can get in burnout themselves because they feel that they are just putting band-aids over band-aid and band-aid.
Yeah. Yeah. One thing that we do in our company, so in my SEO agency, we have each team member do the DeMartini values determination
Yes,
assessment.
yes,
So
yes,
that's
it's a
Dr.
good
John
one.
DeMartini. Yeah, he's been a guest on the podcast. He's phenomenal, and yeah, that gives us a hierarchy of their highest values, and then we look at their job description and their job duties, all the responsibilities, and we try to match them up to their highest values so that they feel like they're doing meaningful work.
Yeah. And this part, when I wrote my book, The Mindset Zone, I was looking for, and I was speaking about this, I was looking for how can I explain this for the individual or for a leader in organization, that's something that I can teach that really can be impactful and stick. So I came with the acronym PIE. I call it the PIE method. And PIE, P-I-E. So who doesn't like a good slice of pie? So P
Mhm.
is for pause. And what you are describing in terms of your organization, you create this container of pauses for people to do some work of looking inside. And what we, in this case, and is take us to the I, that allows them to increase their self awareness. Wonderful. Now you can experiment with something, that is the E, embracing that experimentation mindset, like why let's try to give, if this person have this as a core value for them and they have these strengths, why don't we give them something in their job that is leveraging that, and let's see the results and let's go from there. So this pie, pause, increase self-awareness, and embrace the experimentation mindset works at the level of organization and works at personal level. When the organization give us, oh, you have X amount of funds to do coaching or do a wellness program or using this app, take opportunity there for that to pause, to do that work, allow you to increase your self-awareness, and maybe will work well in the first couple of days or first week, and then you forgot to do it. Give yourself a break, learn from the experience, and see how you can experiment in a different way to take advantage of those resources.
Yeah. And this is an ongoing process. So, like, for example, with the DeMartini's values determination assessment, which, by the way, is free, completely free on Dr. DeMartini's site. I'll include a link to it in the show notes for the episode. Uh, that is best done at least every quarter because your values change over time. And if you only do it once and you've been at a company for 5 or 10 years, almost certainly your values stack has shifted around. Perhaps you had a child, perhaps you had a spiritual awakening, perhaps you suffered from a divorce or some other loss, and you're reevaluating. That's going to shift your values, and then that means your job duties need to shift to match those highest values now too.
Absolutely, and sometimes it's the hierarchy. So one value that was there becomes more important now in this phase of our lives, and I love that. I love the quarterly. Another system that I love in terms of high performance is the 12-week year. That is all about, instead of being seeing the year as 12 months, because okay, when you start January, December is so far away. But if we think, okay, let's take each quarter, a quarter is 13 weeks, but let's look to 12 weeks. 12 weeks as a year. Each week has the value of a month. Each day, work day, a value of a week. how much more we can achieve with that kind of mind frame to look. And give us, for me, the magic is that give us the opportunity of not being waiting to the end of the year to reevaluate everything, but every quarter, press the reset button, pause, look back, look forward, and reset and start again is really powerful.
Yeah. Is that Todd Herman? Because I think his program's called the 90-day year.
90 days. So is from the same spirit of it. This one is from a book called 12-Week Year of Brian P. Moran, but the spirit is the same and goes back to, I know that Brian P. Moran got inspiration from in sports, in high performance in sports, the periodization of training. You focus on a specific skill that you are going to do for a while to improve, and then you focus in another specific skill. And that, even if you go to software, you have the sprints. You focus in one project with a limited time to get it done, and then you have the opportunity of evaluate and restart. That is the power. It's the power of restarting. That is one of the secrets there.
Yeah. All right. Yeah. So Brian P. Moran wrote the 12-week year, which it's got almost 8,000 ratings on Amazon and 4.7 stars on average. That's pretty good. And then Todd Herman, who was a past guest on this podcast, his book, The 90-Day, or no, his program is called The 90-Day Year, but his book is The Alter Ego Effect. And that one is a good one too, with about 1,400 ratings and 4.6 stars on average. So that's pretty good too.
Absolutely. And this is, and if you go, because I think all these systems are pulling out from these things that we know that work. And even if you go, another coach and author, Marshall Goldsmith, very known in this active leadership world, he speaks about, he's a Buddhist practice, so he goes to the Buddhism, and each breath is a new breath. It's almost to the extreme that we can use every moment to restart. So it's really powerful.
Yeah, his books are What Got You Here Won't Get You There, right? And then Triggers.
Yes, Trigger is amazing. Trigger is a great book. And his last one, Life Well Living, something around.
The Earned Life.
The Earned Life is an amazing book too. So I love his things too. He's so good and so recognized for a reason. All these people that we are speaking, Brian P. Moran, Todd Herman, Marshall Goldsmith, there is a reason why, and we spoke before of the classic Covey, Steve Covey. There is a reason why they are so recognized.
Yeah. Now, one other assessment or program that I want to mention, I just recently interviewed Dr. Gary Sanchez, and he has the YOS. And he was inspired by the book Start With Why, and Simon Sinek, of course, the author of it. And he took a whole program with Simon and was really transformed by it. And then he created a whole system. And that's actually something that my team is in the process of doing now. They're going through the why assessment, and then we'll see what we can do in terms of implementing some changes so that their why, their what, and their how, which will all be determined from taking this assessment, are optimally matched to their job duties. So we've already done the DeMartini's assessment. Now we're going to do the YOS, and I'm very excited about that. It's really a cool program. Are you familiar with it?
Yes, it's another powerful tool. So from these tools, the 12-week year, I did a training and I was certified to use that. The others, I know Todd Herman program, I never was certified on it, but I know the program and the results that it gets. And the YOS, I did the as a user, and the results are very, very powerful.
Yeah.
Really, it's different. It's complementary to the other value work. That is really powerful. The insights that you can get from the assessment.
Yeah. So if somebody's doing, let's say, quarterly performance reviews of team members, or they're just in their career getting performance reviews every quarter, if they ask their manager to start assessing them, not just on their work output and whatever their typical KPIs are for the job, but also take into account things like their highest values and their why, then their raison d'etre for being alive, and then making sure that they're getting meaning out of the work. That's such a crucial component to a performance review, I would think.
Absolutely. We go back, since we are speaking about classics, to Man's Search for Meaning of Viktor Frankl, that the key was about exactly that, the purpose, the meaning. And I will add to that list a burnout survey to make sure that you what are the levels there, and gives you the burnout engage continue. Is what I love about the Maslow's tool, is that you have an idea of how many are burnout, overextended, disengage, and engage, and how can you bring more to that engage zone.
Yeah, awesome. And I know we're getting close to time here. You mentioned earlier in this conversation about not being reactive, because of course, if you're overextended, you're overwhelmed, you're burned out, you're disengaged, you're going to be more reactive. You're going to be more on edge. You're going to be grumpier. So um, how do we change behaviors that might be well-worn ruts in people's brain of being reactive and not responsive, or being reactive instead of proactive? How do we change those behaviors, maybe with some new habits?
Understand that we have the power to change the habits. I like to call mindsets habits of mind, that we
Mm.
have the power of changing, that maybe are habits that serve us well during a time in our lives, but maybe we have to let them go to go in a new phase in our lives. And I go back to that famous quote that I so like to say: between a stimulus and a response, there is a space. In that space lies our power to choose our response, and where we can learn, and our freedom too. So, and I'm not saying the quote exactly as it is. So let me see if I can remember in more exact words. Between stimulus and response, there is a space. In that space is the power to choose our response. In our response lies our growth and our freedom. The issue is to press the pause button that allows us to be the space between the stimulus and the response. Because usually, because it's the way that humans are wired, we react. We are used to a trigger that reacts in a certain way, that responds to a certain way, and we do this to save mental energy. Sometimes, once in a while, it's good to press the pause button and choose a different response. That is
Yeah.
the secret of stopping the reactive mode and being more proactive.
Yeah, which reminds me of an episode from 2017 in a course I took on Kabbalah. The episode is with Yehuda Ashkenazi, who was my Kabbalah teacher, and he gave everyone a little uh, just a little card that you put in your wallet, and the title of it was the Proactive Formula. And I'll just share what this card says. After the proactive formula, it says a challenging situation or an obstacle appears. Step 1, pause. Right? Observe your reactive nature. Step 2, become aware that your reaction is the real enemy, not the person you're in conflict with, right? But your reaction. And then number 3, step 3 is realize that the situation is actually coming from the light, from the creator, from your higher power. Step 4, ask the light for help in finding the best proactive solution to the situation or solutions. And then step 5, finally, then take the proactive action. And it's so simple, but when we are in reactive mode and our anger has hijacked our higher senses and sensibilities, and we're no longer acting from wisdom, but from reaction, then the card is very handy to have in your wallet.
Absolutely. And give yourself the grace, because we are, how do you say, it's always easy to go to the old patterns. Our wire is like the road more travel. We go easily there. But if afterwards you are starting to be aware, oh, I didn't like how I react, just the pausing, thinking back about the situation, and then asking yourself what I would like to have done differently, you are starting to rewire your brain.
Yeah.
So wherever you are, give yourself a grace, and you have the power of change. And just by increasing that self-awareness, we go back, it's the pausing that all these systems speak about, increasing the self-awareness, and why not experiment with something new?
Yeah, I love this quote from Jaya, who was actually my first guest, episode number 1 on Get Yourself Optimized, and that she explained that habits, bad habits, patterns become grooves in the brain, kind of like grooves on a record. I remember the days of records. I'm that old. So, and then grooves, without getting those, addressed and changed, they become ruts, and ruts are they become graves, and that is, that's going to be the end of you, really, if you let these things, these well-worn grooves in your brain of bad habits, whether it's smoking, whether it's talking badly about others or about yourself, or self-loathing in some other form. It's terribly toxic.
And it's possible to change.
Yeah.
It's not easy. Being possible doesn't mean that it's easy, but it's absolutely possible. And change is not the switching of a switch, is not on and off. There is a process. It's usually to have some setbacks, it's part of the journey. But if you keep trying and you keep creating the new pathways, that can become your new normal.
Awesome. Well, it's a great way to end this episode. So if our listener or viewer wants to learn more from you, you've got your book, The Mindset Zone, you have your podcast, The Mindset Zone. There's, working with you one-on-one in a coaching capacity as well, I believe. So talk a bit more about how they might take a next step to learn and from you and work with you.
So my website, Ana, A-N-A, Melikian, Melikin.com is probably the best place to contact me. And of course, in social media, where you can contact me directly will be LinkedIn. So, and I'd love to speak about this to organizations, to groups. So this is one, I think by spreading this message, we really are allowing people to create that new, better world out there.
Yeah. Awesome. Well, thank you so much, Ana. And thank you, listener. And do something with this information now. Don't just passively listen to it and then listen to the next episode. Take some positive, proactive action so that you can make your life better, the people you care about's lives better, and your workplace or your company better. I'm your host, Stephan Spencer, signing off.